Kiteboard designs, technologies, constructions, and terminologies can be complicated and confusing. Though the kiteboard industry likes to throw words at us like ultra pop, tech flex, speed contour, torsion control, don't let tech talk and fancy sounding words get in the way of understanding what are actually relatively simple concepts. We all like to sound smarter than we actually are. So creating important sounding words helps make us feel comfortable and warm and fuzzy that we are buying and riding really cool stuff. And it usually works. But knowledge is power, so instead of hiding behind complex explanations, we are just going to keep it simple. The topic for today is outlines of twin-tip kiteboards. I was taught in my high school speech class to state your outline when making a presentation, so the following is my outline. We are now in the introduction. We will shortly be moving to the body, and finally we'll move to the conclusion. So what is an outline? An outline, by definition, is the defining shape of a kiteboard from tip to tail, or tip to tip, as seen from the deck or from the base. There are no groupings or categories of outline per se in the general sense. The parameters are set by two extremes. For the most part, outlines fall somewhere between a circular flying saucer and a square outhouse door. Wait, what's that? Oh, I've already used the outhouse door comparison. Alright, so they fall somewhere in between the circular flying saucer and a honey bucket door? Unlike board rockers, where small changes make big differences, board outlines need fairly dramatic changes to completely change performance. We are going to put a few descriptive words and groups for outline shapes to help us learn what differing outline shapes actually do on the water. The first group we will call outline shape, and the two descriptive words we will use are square and round. The second group we will call outline width, and use descriptive words narrow and wide. Once again, you're a witness to my mastery of the English language by choosing such complex words like square, round, narrow, and wide. Typically, all outlines will be a combination of two of these descriptive words, ending up with either a square wide, square narrow, round wide, or round narrow outline. So let's get to round outlines. Round outlines have a larger difference of width between the center of the board and the tips. Round outlines typically have more subtle movement on the water and feel a bit more playful because there's less effective edge in contact with the water. This means that you can get a board with a rounder outline to move easier with less leg pressure. Round outlines will have a tighter turning radius and can handle a lot of power in high wind. Square outlines have a small difference in width between the center of the board and the tips. Square outlines will feel more locked in on the water, track in a straight line, and go upwind really well. A narrow outline, meaning an overall narrower profile of the board, will typically be faster and have a lower overall weight. However, because there is less surface area with narrow outline, it will not be the best for generating power in light winds. A wide outline will make it easier to land tricks as the increased surface area will increase the board stability and will create more power on the water in lighter winds. And though a wider outline can be more difficult to get on edge in higher wind conditions, the width will make water starting faster and easier. For the most part, modern outlines tend to fall into the square wide or round wide categories. Mostly it's because these outlines offer the most power per centimeter, the easiest landings, and the most surface area for maintaining board speed. As a side note, some light wind boards actually have reverse curve outlines, or what the snow industry would call side cut. This outline is made to increase the amount of edge that you have in contact with the water to make it easier to go upwind and generate power with an exaggerated effective edge. This outline is only found on light wind boards. Alright, so what outline is best for you? Well, now that you know what outline does, more or less, it's time to determine which outline suits you. Even though most men and women would choose outlines that look like this, or this, when it comes to kiteboard outlines, there is not one perfect answer. Beginner riders in the past were subjected to some huge, beastly boards that would sometimes reach 180 centimeters. In addition to being almost impossible to turn, long boards like this often weighed a metric ton. Since then, we have learned that even though a board 180 centimeters long offered a lot of surface area, it didn't offer it where it could be used most efficiently, which is right between your feet. So, if we've determined that surface area is an important factor for water starting and learning your first rides, a square, wide outline is a good bet for a beginner. However, as always, conditions matter. If you are learning in a high wind place, you may not need to generate any extra power, in which case something with a rounder outline would also work for you. Now, intermediate riders usually fall into the free ride or all-around category, and a square, wide outline will typically provide an outline that they would want. A squarer outline puts more pressure on your back heel side edge and provides excellent grip for setting up for big jumps. It also provides great power, upwind ability, and stability for landings. One common request for advancing intermediate riders is a board that does all that I just mentioned, but is also good in the waves. By design, a wide and square twin tip outline is not going to behave very well in the waves. Wide, square outlines have a broad turning radius and are not the best for tight curves that you would want when you're wave riding. My advice is that if you want a board that excels in the waves, get a wave board. Advanced riders are typically only interested in square wide or round wide outlines. Freestyle and wake style riders would consider it a personal preference, and you can find both styles on the World Tour on strapped and wake boot riders alike. Many advanced riders want a wide outline, but like when the tips are drawn in, making it a bit rounder at the tip and tail. This drawn-in section allows for more of a split-second movement off that back corner of the board to set up for tricks at a moment's notice. However, others like the powerful, locked-in feel of a square outline, as when you pop off that back heel-side fin, it feels almost like a snowboard stop, then explosion out of the water. Either way, wider outlines provide the power and stability needed for advanced riders to really push their riding level. Now, one side note that falls under the category of outline, but not often talked about, is tip and tail shape. The two basic shapes that we're going to talk about are a square tail and a round tail. Much like square and round outlines, however, you can combine a square tail with a round outline and vice versa. A square tail looks more or less like this, but almost every manufacturer adds their own little flair to the design by putting angles or cutouts or whatever in the tail. The main thing that a square tail has is a quick and abrupt water release off of the corner where the edge rail meets the tip. This makes for a fairly stiff feeling when loading up the tail, but typically translates into a more torsional flex and response, resulting in pop out of the water. If it's too sharp at the corner, it will always kick water spray up into your eyes. Look for a corner that has some of the sharpness taken out of it to make sure that you keep the power in the pop, but skip the water pelting in the eye. A rounder tail has a release that wraps around the tail and creates a bit more surface tension, making pop a bit more difficult to attain. What you lose in pop, however, you would make up for in carving and turning. Long story short, now that you know what tail shape does, you can look at tail shapes combined with outlines and have a pretty good idea of what the performance is going to be on the water. I would like to end this show with a section I like to call Ben's Sack of Mail. This is where I read funny and or interesting messages that I've received from viewers. The first one comes from KiteBarney88. I always wondered what happened to David Spade, and I guess I found him. P.S. You're still not funny. So he's saying that I look like David Spade? The next one comes from 12 Buckle My Poo, and they say, Jeff Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemind High is a better speaker. I'm definitely dumber for having watched this. Thank you. And finally, from Sky Blue for You, I laughed, I cried, I learned. Not overly mean, I'll take it. Well, I hope you've learned that outlines play a big role in how a board is going to feel on the water, and it's really one of the three major parts that make up a board's performance along with rocker and construction. Please stay tuned for more episodes in the education series, and if you haven't seen all of the episodes, check out our YouTube channel, go to Axon Kiteboarding website, or give us a shout on the social media. Until next time, auf Wiedersehen!